Was glaubst du, was darüber hinaus geholfen hat?
What else
In
would you
dem
say helped us to
Lockdown, der ja
nevertheless
für alle
operate
schon eine
successfully during the lockdown,
Massensituation war,
which was
dennoch
obviously a
erfolgreich zu sein
challenging
oder sehr
situation for
als Unternehmung,
everyone,
als tegos auch
regarding which
gespiegelt
tegos
bekommen
received
haben?
feedback?
Firstly, it's the people who have a part to play in this. And then there are the excellent tools that we have at our disposal. Our only and best partner, Microsoft, has done a great deal in this area in recent years. As already mentioned, our entire IT infrastructure is in the cloud, and our teams have been using it there for years, including to make phone calls, etc. And these are all factors that have contributed to us as a company having coped with the situation very well.
Jetzt zu
Touch
unseren
wood.
Kunden. Wenn du schaust auf die
Other than
Kreislaufwirtschaft oder
customers, when you look at
grundsätzlich
the
halt auf
circular
auf
economy or waste
Massensortung,
management and
Recycling,
recycling
was
in
glaubst
general, what
du,
do you think
was
needs
in
to
der
happen
Branche
within the
passieren
sector in
muss,
order for
um
it to
weiterhin
remain
erfolgreich
successful?
zu
What
bleiben?
is your
Aus
personal
deine
opinion?
persönliche Einschätzung.
Also ich nehme die Kreislaufwirtschaft
I see the circular economy as being a very broad field, which also includes producers and manufacturers. There is undoubtedly still a great deal of potential there, from manufacturing through to recycling. If I consider the recycling and waste management companies in isolation, I think they need to get themselves in a better position than their competition. Because these days, there is competition from all sides. Websites such as Rubicon and also Lidl are now getting involved in the waste management industry. In other words, industry outsiders are trying to gain a foothold in waste management with the digitalization of processes. And this is an area in which, I would say, the waste management industry still has a great deal to do before it can offer its customers added value. It's not enough to simply buy an efficient truck. Rather, I think it's incredibly important that the waste management companies significantly ramp up the digitalization of their own business processes. Recycling being a local business, they are already close to the customers. Recycling occurs at the customer's premises, so proximity is already there. The waste management companies now need to exploit this and use appropriate tools and methods to further advance their digitalization in order that they can then offer their customers greater added value and remain at the cutting edge.
Jahre Verständnis für diese Branche.
20
Siehst
years
du
of
auf der
understanding the
Lidl-Website noch
industry,
was
surely that
anderes?
makes a
Aber ich glaube,
difference,
schon,
don't you
es macht
think?
doch was aus. Oder wie siehst du das?
Das Tolle ist, wenn man sich wirklich
What's
fokussiert
great
auf
is that when you decide to focus on services for a specific industry, a specific segment, like we did, rather than running around trying to please everyone, you are able to understand your customers' processes and assist them as a member of the IT staff. We know how the process in the waste management industry and circular economy can be digitalized. And it goes without saying that the 20 years of experience and expertise that our employees have built up here, as does the fact that we operate at the cutting edge of this industry. Consequently, we are in a position to offer assistance with the change processes that the waste management industry is experiencing. As already mentioned, any company can focus purely on logistics these days and simply move waste from A to B. But what business success really comes down to is really being able to operate a circular economy and develop production processes from all of this that then result in waste being recycled, raw materials being extracted, etc. I would say we are there for our customers from the truck all the way through to their accounting. I don't make any distinctions. Is what the binman triggers out there, or what the logistic companies triggers, a technical process, or is it a process which is triggered by financial controlling and accounting? We are able to present all of these processes together and can oversee them and help to automate them a great deal, thereby generating clean and valuable findings for future business decisions.
Are there naysayers out there?
Büroberufe,
How far
wie
has
weit
this
ist denn
industry
deine
even
Branche
come in
oder was
terms
die
of
Digitalisierung
digitalization?
anbelangt, deine
On a
Einschätzung?
scale of
Da
1 to
hast du
10,
gesehen, wie
How digital would you say the recycling and waste management industry was?
That's a difficult question. And I don't want to tread on anyone's toes, but I think there are always two values, your own perception and the perception of others, how you feel and what is actually the reality of the situation. To give you an analogy, had someone asked me 4 years ago whether I felt I was sporty, I would have said yes, I feel totally sporty. But does that mean I would have been able to run a marathon? No. I wouldn't have managed it, but I would now. I think there is our own perception of ourselves, and then there's the other people's perception of us. And I think a lot of waste management companies think they are already ever so digital. But can you call it digital if they receive orders online, which are then printed out by a printer? I wouldn't call that digitalization, but some companies do see it like that. Also, I don't think there is uniformity. You can't say the industry has the same degree of digitalization across the board. It varies greatly from market player to market player. To give another example of this self-perception, I might say I was very good at separating my waste, while the waste disposal company would say there was definitely still room for improvement there. So it varies greatly, and there is definitely still more that can be done in this respect.
Did the lockdown that we just went through highlight a weak spot, so to speak, and make the advancement of digitalization inevitable?
Yes, digitalization is being advanced, and I think it was already being advanced anyway. In all of our projects, we not only had the topic of ERP, which is actually where our roots have lain for 20 years with Enwis, but also the topic of self-service, as well as websites and digital workflows. It was already there, but the demand and the pace of development were intensified and will be further intensified by the lockdown.
Do you think something as banal as saying something is already in place, such as automatic financial accounting, can help? In other words, is this already a basis for action?
I think automated financial accounting or automated processes, such as digital invoice receipt workflow, do help to simplify routine work and boost speed and efficiency. If there are things that really could be automated, we could maybe have done so in the lockdown. And we did, but our customers may have then have had their people handle the entire financial accounting from home. A financial accounting account can then become more of a customer account, focusing more on the outstanding items, rather than simply mindlessly crunching numbers. And it is now more important than ever that I really can maintain the cash flow and liquidity. You may run your business well, but if the customer ceases to pay, you have a problem. So the greater the level of automation and the more the staff are able to focus on other topics, the better. I therefore think automated financial accounting, automated processes can be a huge help in setting up a company solidly.
It may not necessarily be the case, but if it is, why do you think working within a single tool in financial controlling is a hidden champion?
Perhaps it is not yet seen as an active management instrument by a lot of customers. As a shareholder and a managing director, I do see it like that. It goes without saying that a salesperson sees things from a different perspective, focusing more on the customer than me. But it is actually an active management instrument and needs to be established as such.
Forecasts at the click of a mouse. Is this inevitably already, or should it inevitably be every CFO's wish? Do you think there are any stumbling blocks here? And if so, what are they?
The stumbling block to really being able to get that at the click of a mouse is probably the data. The data needs to be well prepared. It needs to be available. So the downstream obviously also has an important role to play, especially for a CFO with an analysis system. Is the data really available in a structured format within the system? It's a question of volumes, of waste streams, of finance flows, some of which are highly volatile. You need to make this available in a good system, and I think we're pretty good at that, perhaps better than others. But something which is notable is that other data is becoming more and more important. In other words, taking an example which presented itself because of the coronavirus, how can I see that we really did sit down with the customer and analyze how the market would develop? For example, is a port opening again somewhere in the country? And if the port opens, how do I apply the coronavirus line? You really then could read off when the port could theoretically reopen depending on where the infection numbers increased, and you could generate forecasts for other countries too. This is important if I have very long supply chains and if I am taking recyclable materials to other countries. This means it's not only the data that comes from my own system which has an important role to play. The stumbling block is therefore perhaps the fact that simple data analysis hasn't been in place, or that warehousing figure has a role to play here too. The stumbling block is therefore perhaps the fact that simple data analysis hasn't been in place, or that this is not something which a company has addressed yet. But that can be remedied. Artificial intelligence has a part to play here regarding how I analyze data. And just this week, a major waste disposal company brought a company that analyzes and prepares data. I think there is a trend in this direction, and you can see what issues major waste disposal companies are addressing.
As a shareholder yourself, what would be your recommendation for being effectively prepared for the next few years in the area of finance?
I think we touched on this earlier. We need to get away from islands, from the data miners, and move towards the analysis of all kinds of data that I can actually obtain and generate. I believe a CFO, a shareholder, should now recognize where they should invest and where they can make savings. The processes should be called into question too. What expectations do the customers have of me? How do I need to structure my new services? Which products? And of course, the workforce is also asking the CFO how the company is faring in this crisis. What action do we need to take? Which means the CFO doesn't only need to be able to analyze, he also needs to be able to predict. That is to say, what options, what future is the company facing, and what future markets do we have? I think there is a great deal of work to be done here by CFOs, where it's not just about number crunching, but also about looking to the future.
The past few weeks have demonstrated that agility is everything. How do I establish an agile finance setup?
I would say by beginning to invest and taking the first step. There's a great saying that the good guys invest in bad times too. I think that's what you should do. If you say you want to create a finance setup, now is absolutely the right time to do it. As already mentioned, it's about where you invest and where you make savings. And savings aren't the right way to go here.
You mentioned things that are changing in general in the recycling industry. But do you think the companies were in a good way before the lockdown? This is obviously a crunch question, but can you actually make a general judgment on that? Would you intuitively say there was still room for improvement there? Or would you say they were doing pretty well, but that the general situation has now highlighted a weak spot, and that now is the time to act?
Also das so pauschal zu sagen, steht mir nicht zu. Aber sicher wird aus meiner Sicht
It's not for me to generalize here, but from what I can see, the companies in the recycling industry are definitely now spending more money on machinery and equipment than on digital transformation of their business processes. The former is something the acting person can really get their hands on. You see a new truck standing there, and you think, wow, what a great investment we made, because the truck will generally then generate a return straight away. But when one of us comes along and goes on about the digital transformation process or about the digitalization of business processes, that hands-on experience is lacking. The analogy I always draw is of someone buying a new car and seeing it parked outside, says, wow, look what I got for my money. But when we come along, the most the person physically gets from us, if anything, is a CD, and they are expected to fork out a great deal of money for it. That is very tricky, but as already mentioned, software is an imaginary asset that's not all that tangible, and I think there is a lot of room for improvement here. I think we should automate jobs in the recycling industry to the same high degree that we are familiar with in our private lives. The comparison I make is this. Everyone can use a smartphone these days and loves all the different functions available. This is how we need to sell our software too, and the software has to work, thereby digitalizing our industry's business process. And when this is the case, people have fun and are happy to come to work, and the whole thing is shifted slightly from the highly theoretical to the practical.
Haben wir ja gerade schon auf einer anderen Ebene diskutiert, dass sicherlich jetzt
We were just discussing this at a different level. This has certainly become a big issue because many companies within our industry, and at times all companies irrespective of the industry, are obviously paying more and more attention to their figures, their KPIs, etc. As a company, how do we at tegos tackle the topic of finance? Do we have a best practice?
I would say we tackle it pretty professionally. At all times, we have an overview at the touch of a button of our liquidity, our current capacity utilization, our orders on hand, the forecast, the costs, and the status of our projects. And for all of this, we essentially use one single system. This is important because what I don't need is major interfaces between different systems. At all times, we can use all of this up-to-date and readily available information to do everything it takes to manage the company wisely. As a spokesperson for the tegos management, I have significant responsibility for the topic of finance too. This is a particular passion of mine, and I set great store by having as great a degree of automation as possible. Minimal pure data entry for me, this is dull and mindless work, and I don't consider it to be important. What's important is that we analyze the data and implement financial controlling as early as possible. Take the example of outstanding items. I need to know on a daily basis what my outstanding item situation is because this has a significant impact on my liquidity. I don't want to have to plow my way through long lists or various complex program systems first. I want to be able to simply press a button and see a list of the outstanding items to know who I then need to talk to.